8 years. That's how long Tae-yang had been pressing his small hands against his right ear, wincing like something invisible was stabbing him from the inside. 8 years of silence in a house that had everything money could buy, except the one thing that mattered. His father, Park Min-jae, had burned through $40 million. Consultations in Seoul, surgeries in London, specialists in Johns Hopkins, whose reputations were so legendary, their waiting lists stretched beyond 2 years. Every single one examined this boy and delivered the same soul-crushing verdict. Severe auditory nerve damage, completely irreversible. Learn to accept it and move forward with your life. But here's what nobody knew yet. There was something there. Something so simple, so obvious, that when the truth finally came out, it would make every one of those high-priced experts look like fools. And the person who discovered it? She wasn't standing in some prestigious medical office with diplomas covering the walls. She was on her knees scrubbing floors in a Connecticut mansion, wearing a gray uniform that still smelled like discount detergent. She'd been working there for exactly 2 weeks. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before this story goes any further, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. Slam that like button, because what you're about to hear is going to wreck you in the best possible way. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know this story reached you, wherever you are in this world. Let me take you back 3 months before everything changed. Min-jae sat in yet another specialist's office, this one in Seoul's most exclusive medical tower. The doctor, a man whose credentials took up half the wall, was shaking his head slowly while flipping through Tae-yang's file. The folder was thick enough to be a novel, a very expensive, very depressing novel. Mr. Park. The doctor's voice carried that particular tone of finality that Min-jae had learned to hate. I've consulted with my colleagues across 3 continents. The consensus is completely unanimous. Your son's auditory nerve damage is permanent. There's nothing more that can be done. I'm truly sorry. Min-jae didn't move. He'd heard variations of this speech in Tokyo, in London, in Boston. Different accents, same devastating message. He simply nodded once, stood up, and walked out of that office like a man who'd stopped feeling things a long time ago. In his car, he sat gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. On the dashboard was a small photo, his late wife Ji-hai, smiling in a way that felt like it belonged to another lifetime. He touched it gently. "I'm trying, Yobo," he whispered to the photograph. "I'm still trying. I don't know what else to do, but I'm trying." The Park Estate in Greenwich, Connecticut wasn't a home. It was an architectural showpiece, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in too much light for the amount of warmth inside. The staff moved through it like ghosts, efficient, silent, careful, never to disturb the man who signed their paychecks or the boy everyone whispered about when they thought no one was listening. Mrs. Crawford ran the household with British precision and ice-cold efficiency. Thomas, the groundskeeper, made the sign of the cross whenever Tae-yang passed by, convinced the child carried some kind of curse. Elena, the day nurse, performed her duties with clinical detachment, never once looking the boy in the eyes. And Tae-yang, he existed in the center of all this expensive emptiness like a ghost himself. 8 years old, sitting alone in a bedroom full of untouched toys that well-meaning relatives kept sending. Every few minutes he'd press his hand against his right ear and his small face would twist in pain that no one seemed to notice or care about anymore. The staff had their theories, whispered during cigarette breaks and lunch hours. The boy was cursed. His mother had died bringing him into this world, and he'd been born wrong, marked by tragedy. It was easier to believe in curses than to look too closely at a suffering child. But 70 miles away in a cramped apartment in Bridgeport where the heat only worked half the time, Maya Thorne was on her knees beside her bed, hands clasped so tight her fingers had gone numb. "Lord, I need this job." Her voice cracked on the words. "Grandma Rose's medical bills are destroying me. I can't lose her, not after losing everyone else. Please, Guide my steps today. Show me what you want me to do." She opened her eyes and stared at the acceptance letter on her dresser. Hartford School of Nursing, dated 5 years ago. She'd never enrolled. Couldn't afford to. Not after Grandma Rose's dementia diagnosis, not after the bills started piling up like a tsunami of paper that never stopped coming. There was another memory she carried, one that woke her up some nights drenched in cold sweat. She'd been 12 years old, watching her younger brother Daniel struggle to breathe, his lips turning blue while their mother sobbed because they couldn't afford the emergency room. By the time they scraped together enough money, Daniel was gone. Pneumonia, treatable, preventable, fatal, because they were poor. Maya had made herself a promise over Daniel's small casket. Never again. If she ever had the power to help someone, she would, no matter what it cost her. The interview at the Park Estate was exactly what she expected. Mrs. Crawford looked at her like she was inspecting produce at a market, checking for bruises and flaws. "We need someone who can keep their head down and their mouth shut, Miss Thorne." The older woman's voice could have frozen water. "Mr. Park values silence above all else. The boy is not your concern. Your job is to clean, nothing more. Do you understand?" Maya nodded, but her attention had already drifted to a photograph on the wall. Min-jae and Tae-yang standing together, both looking in different directions, like two people who happened to occupy the same frame by accident rather than choice. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, from back when Grandma Rose still had more good days than bad. "Baby girl, God doesn't make mistakes about where he puts his people. You end up exactly where he needs you." Maya's first real encounter with Tae-yang happened on her 3rd day. She was dusting the upstairs hallway, trying to be invisible the way Mrs. Crawford had instructed, when she saw him. He was standing by a window, one small hand pressed against his right ear, tears streaming silently down his face. His whole body was rigid with pain. Their eyes met. Something passed between them in that moment, recognition maybe, or understanding. Like two people who'd both known what it felt like to hurt while everyone around you pretended not to see. Maya smiled softly. Tae-yang didn't smile back, but he didn't look away either. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya watched. Really watched. This wasn't just deafness. The boy was in constant pain. Every few hours he'd clutch his ear and his face would contort, but the staff walked past him like he was furniture. Mrs. Crawford had a rigid schedule. Elena administered medications with mechanical efficiency. Thomas avoided him completely, but Maya saw. One morning, she left a paper crane on Tae-yang's desk, a simple origami bird she'd folded during her break. She didn't expect anything, but the next day, there was a crane waiting for her on the hallway table. Clumsy, lopsided, but beautiful. He'd made it for her. They started communicating through drawings. Tae-yang had created his own signs, gestures that meant things only he understood. Maya learned them. She learned that touching his chest meant hurt, that covering his eyes meant scared, that pressing both palms together meant thank you. And then he showed her a new one, both hands over his heart, then extending outward toward her. She didn't understand at first, but he kept doing it, and finally she got it. Safe. She made him feel safe. According to Elena, he'd never used that sign with anyone else. Mrs. Crawford cornered her one afternoon in the laundry room. "Miss Thorne, I've noticed you spending considerable time near the boy." Her voice was sharp as a blade. "Let me be absolutely clear. Mr. Park has spent 8 years and $40 million on specialists, real doctors with real credentials. If they couldn't help him, you certainly cannot. Don't get attached. Don't get involved. Your job is to clean, not to care. I have 3 years until retirement, and I cannot afford complications. Neither can you." That night, Maya knelt beside her bed again. "Lord, he's hurting. Every single day he's hurting and nobody cares. What am I supposed to do? I'm nobody. Just a maid scrubbing floors. I don't have medical training. I don't have authority. I don't have anything." But she couldn't stop thinking about it. couldn't stop seeing Tae-yang's face twisted in agony while people with degrees and reputations walked past him. She remembered volunteering at the free clinic in Bridgeport back before Grandma Rose got really bad. She'd helped with basic procedures, cleaning wounds, changing dressings, assisting with ear irrigations. She remembered her cousin Marcus, who'd been labeled deaf for 6 years. Nerve damage, the doctors said. Accept it. But then a new doctor at that free clinic had actually really looked, and found a massive blockage deep in the ear canal. One simple removal procedure, and Marcus could hear perfectly. The nerve damage had been a lie built on assumption and laziness. What if nobody had actually looked at Tae-yang? What if they'd all just read the previous doctor's notes and assumed? 2 days later, it happened. Maya was cleaning the library when she heard a heavy thud from the hallway. She dropped her dust cloth and ran. Tae-yang had collapsed near the stairs, curled into a ball, holding his ear while his whole body shook with silent sobs. She knelt beside him, heart hammering. In broken signs and gentle touches, she asked permission to look. He was terrified. Doctors had only ever heard him, poked him, made grand pronouncements, and then disappeared. But his eyes found Maya's face, and something in him relaxed. He trusted her. With trembling hands, Maya pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. She gently tilted his head, peered into his ear canal. At first, she saw nothing unusual. Then she adjusted the angle and her breath caught. Deep inside, barely visible, was something dark. Not normal earwax, but something dense and solid, like it had been compacted over years. It was blocking everything. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Nobody looked. How did nobody actually look?" She tried telling Mrs. Crawford, catching her in the kitchen between tasks. "There's something in his ear. I saw it, something blocking." "Ms. Thorne." Mrs. Crawford's voice could have cut glass. "The doctors know best. You're being presumptuous and, frankly, foolish. I suggest you return to your duties before I'm forced to report this conversation to Mr. Park." That night, Maya called Grandma Rose at the care facility. Most days, her grandmother didn't recognize her anymore, lost in the fog of dementia. But occasionally, there were moments of clarity that felt like gifts from God. "Grandma, I found something. A little boy who's suffering. I think I can help him, but I could lose my job. I could get in serious trouble. Should I?" "Baby." Grandma Rose's voice came through clear as a bell, sharp in a way it hadn't been for months. "The Lord doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. If that child is suffering and you have the power to help him, what's stopping you? Fear of man or faith in God? You already know the answer. You knew it before you called me." Maya spent that entire night in prayer, wrestling with terror, with doubt, with the memory of Daniel's blue lips and her mother's screams. She could lose everything. She could hurt Tae-yang if she was wrong. She could end up arrested. But she kept seeing his face, kept seeing 8 years of pain that everyone with power and credentials had ignored. "Lord, I'm scared," she whispered into the darkness. "But I can't watch another child suffer when I can do something. If this is wrong, stop me. But if you're calling me to act, give me steady hands and courage." Peace settled over her. Not certainty. She still had no idea if this would work, but peace. The kind that didn't make sense unless you'd felt it before. She sterilized a pair of precision tweezers with rubbing alcohol, watched YouTube videos on ear canal safety until her eyes burned, and prayed over those tools like they were holy instruments. If he's in pain again tomorrow, that's my sign. That's when I act. The next afternoon, Tae-yang stumbled into the hallway clutching his ear, face contorted in agony so severe he couldn't stand upright. Maya made her decision in that instant. She took his hand, led him to her small maid's quarters, and locked the door behind them. She knelt before him, signing carefully with shaking hands. "Trust me, I won't hurt you. Jesus is with us." Tae-yang's tears were falling hard, but he nodded. He trusted her. Maya's hands trembled as she positioned the tweezers. "Lord, guide me, steady my hands, protect this child." She carefully inserted the tweezers into his ear canal, going deeper than felt safe, until she felt resistance. Something solid. She pulled gently, steadily, praying with every breath. The mass came free. Dark, hardened, a plug of cerumen mixed with debris and what looked like dried blood. Years of buildup that had been slowly destroying this child's life. Tae-yang's eyes went wide. His mouth opened in a gasp, and then his hands flew to his ears, not in pain but in shock. The ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the air conditioner, Maya's ragged breathing. The world was flooding in. What? His voice cracked, unused and raw. Not words, just sounds. Da, what? He made guttural noises, animal-like cries of confusion and wonder, stumbling backward. Maya was sobbing, reaching for him. That sound, baby. That's the world. You're hearing the world. The door burst open. Minji stood there, home early from a meeting, his face a mask of confusion and rage. He'd heard crying, actual audible crying, coming from the maid's quarters. His eyes landed on Tae-yang, hands over his ears, making sounds. Then on Maya, holding bloody tweezers and cotton swabs. What have you done to my son? His voice was thunder. He grabbed his phone. Security, get up here immediately. And then Tae-yang turned to him, made a sound. Da! Raw and broken, but intentional. Minjae froze. The phone slipped in his hand. Tae-yang. The boy lurched toward him, crashing into his father's chest, making more sounds, crying audibly for the first time in his life. Da, da. Not words yet, but communication. Real, desperate, beautiful communication. Minjae looked at Maya over his son's head, his face a war between rage and confusion, and something that might have been hope. What did you do? The hospital emergency room was chaos. Minjae insisted on immediate transport. Maya was escorted by security like a criminal, treated like she'd assaulted the child rather than saved him. The doctors ran every test imaginable. Tae-yang could hear. The auditory nerves were completely intact. There had never been any nerve damage. Dr. Kim, the ENT specialist, pulled up old scans on his computer. His face went pale. Mr. Park, I need to show you something. A scan from 3 years ago filled the screen. Clear as day, there was a dense obstruction visible in Tae-yang's right ear canal. This was noted in the file, Dr. Kim said quietly, unable to meet Minjae's eyes. The attending physician wrote, cerumen impaction noted, likely insignificant given primary diagnosis of congenital nerve damage. It was deemed not worth pursuing. Minjae's voice went deadly quiet. You saw it. You all saw it and did nothing. For 3 years. While I paid for ongoing consultations. Dr. Kim had no answer. The silence said everything. They'd assumed the expensive tests were correct. They'd stopped looking for simple solutions. Or worse, they'd been profiting from a wealthy, desperate father who would pay anything endlessly for hope. Minjae found Maya sitting in a security office, waiting to find out if she'd be arrested or just fired. She stood when he entered, bracing for the worst. Instead, he dropped to one knee before her. In Korean culture, this gesture meant everything. Profound humility, absolute apology, recognition of a debt that could never be repaid. Maya. His voice broke on her name. I almost had you arrested for saving my son's life. I spent 8 years throwing money at people with credentials and reputations, and not one of them truly saw my son. You did. In 2 weeks, you saw what they all refused to see. Tears were streaming down his face now. I'm so sorry for doubting you, for failing Tae-yang, for being so consumed by grief and guilt that I stopped trusting anything real. Maya helped him stand, her own eyes wet. Mr. Park, I didn't do this alone. God put me in that house for a reason. He gave me eyes to see and courage to act. I'm just grateful he used me. I was so angry at God when Ji-hai died, Minjae whispered. I stopped believing he cared about us. But you showed me he never left. He sent you. Back in the hospital room, Tae-yang sat wearing headphones, listening to music for the first time in his life. His face was pure wonder. When he saw Maya and his father enter together, he pulled off the headphones and signed, "Thank you, love you." Maya signed back, tears falling freely. "Love you too, sweet boy." Outside, the sun was setting. Min-jae and Maya stood in the parking lot, exhausted and transformed. "Maya, I know this isn't the right time, but I can't let you go back to just cleaning floors. What do you really want? What did you want before life got hard?" Maya hesitated. "I wanted to be a nurse. Got accepted 5 years ago, but when Grandma got sick, I had to choose between tuition and her care." "Then let me help. Not as payment. Nothing could repay what you've done. But because Tae-yang needs you in his life. Because we both do." There was a look between them. Something deeper than gratitude, more complex than friendship. Possibility. Maya smiled softly. "One step at a time. But yes, I'd like to stay." Behind them, Tae-yang ran out laughing, actually laughing, hearing his own voice for the first time, and the sound was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever heard. If this story moved you, do me one last favor. Share it. Hit that share button and send it to someone who needs to hear that miracles still happen, that sometimes God uses the least likely people to do the most impossible things. Subscribe if you haven't already, because there are more stories like this waiting. Grandma Rose used to say God's delays aren't his denials. Tae-yang waited 8 years. Min-jae waited 8 years. Maya waited her whole life to understand why God allowed so much pain. Now she knew. It was all leading here, to this moment, this miracle, this family. Sometimes the greatest faith isn't believing God will save us from the storm. It's trusting he'll walk through it with us, and that on the other side, we'll find exactly what we were meant to find.